Welcome to Wealth and Wounds, where we uncover stories of injustice, power, and redemption. If you love powerful storytelling where the underdog rises and justice is served, make sure to subscribe right now and hit that bell so you don't miss the truth behind the lies. It was a warm afternoon in 1995. Children played in the streets, the sound of basketballs echoed through driveways, and neighbors mowed their lawns without a worry in the world. But for the Miller family, that day would become a nightmare that would never end. Because on April 13th, their 14-year-old daughter, Sarah Miller, vanished, walking home from school. She was never seen again. For 28 long years, her name was just a whisper, her memory reduced to cold files buried in a dusty police archive. Until one shocking discovery finally brought her truth to light. And the person behind the betrayal? Someone no one dared suspect. Sarah Miller wasn't extraordinary in the way most people define it. She wasn't the loudest, the funniest, or the most popular, but she was gentle, kind, and bright. She dreamed of being a writer. She carried a little pink journal where she scribbled poems and short stories. Her mother, Linda, was raising her alone. Her father had abandoned the family years earlier. Linda worked 2 jobs: a waitress by day, a cleaner by night. She didn't have much, but she gave Sarah everything. On that April afternoon, Sarah stepped off the yellow school bus, waved goodbye to her best friend, and started the familiar walk down Maple Street. She was supposed to be home in 10 minutes. She never arrived. Panic set in immediately. Neighbors joined Linda in searching the streets. Calls were made. Posters were printed. But when the case landed on the desk of Police Chief Raymond Clark, things took a darker turn. Clark was respected, feared, even a man of power in a small Ohio town. He had a booming voice and a reputation for keeping order. But behind closed doors, he was arrogant, dismissive, and ruthless. When Linda begged him to escalate the search, Clark shook his head. Kids run away all the time. She'll come back when she's ready. His words crushed her. For weeks, Linda fought. She stood outside the police station. She pleaded with reporters. She demanded answers. But Clark shut her down at every turn. He dismissed witnesses who claimed they saw Sarah near a white van. He ignored neighbors who reported screams near Willow Drive. He painted Linda as hysterical, unstable. The town believed him. The underdog mother was left to grieve alone, ridiculed, and silenced. The years rolled on. Sarah's pink journal sat untouched on her nightstand, the last piece of her voice in a world that stopped listening. Linda never gave up. She wrote letters to governors, senators, even the FBI. Most never replied. Meanwhile, Clark thrived. He was promoted, honored, respected. The man who silenced the truth was celebrated as a hero, and the Miller family was forgotten. Until March of 2023, a construction crew tearing down an abandoned house near the outskirts of town made a chilling discovery. Beneath a rotting shed lay a rusted metal box. Inside were trinkets, photos, and, shockingly, a small pink journal. Sarah's journal. DNA tests confirmed it. The town gasped. After 28 years of silence, Sarah's voice had returned. Modern forensic testing revealed fingerprints on a box. They belonged to Thomas Green, the very man neighbors had once pointed to in 1995. The same man who drove the suspicious white van. But Green had died in 2012. He would never face trial. Yet, as detectives dug deeper, they uncovered something far worse. Chief Clark had received multiple reports in 1995 linking Green to Sarah's disappearance. Witness statements, vehicle descriptions, even a neighbor's diary entry. Clark had buried them all. Why? Because Green was Clark's longtime friend. The betrayal cut deep. When the truth hit the media, the town erupted in outrage. Clark, once celebrated, was dragged into the spotlight. Reporters shouted questions outside his home. Protesters held Sarah's photo in the streets. Clark tried to deny it, but the evidence was undeniable. Documents, destroyed reports, falsified files all traced back to him. Linda, the underdog who had once been ignored, finally stood tall before the cameras. Holding her daughter's journal in trembling hands, she said, "They call me crazy. They told me to stop asking. But a mother never stops fighting for a child." And today, my Sarah finally speaks louder than their lies. The tables had turned. Though Green was gone, Clark was charged with obstruction, misconduct, and evidence tampering. His pension revoked, his honor stripped, his reputation destroyed. The irony was brutal. The man who silenced justice was now silenced by it. For Linda, justice wasn't about punishment. It was about truth, about restoring her daughter's name. Sarah's final words in her journal echoed like prophecy. I want to be remembered. I want my words to live on, even if I don't. When detectives thought Sarah Miller's case was finally closed, they found something darker. Hidden in the basement of Thomas Green's old house was a false wall. Behind it lay dozens of photographs. Photographs of children. Children who had disappeared. And in that moment, Sarah's story was no longer about one girl. It was about many. March 2023. Green's house, long abandoned, had become an eerie shell. The walls smelled of mold, the floorboards sagged, and the air was thick with dust. Detectives sweeping the property for additional evidence noticed something odd, a section of basement wall that sounded hollow when tapped. After hours of chiseling, they uncovered a narrow crawl space. Inside were boxes stacked neatly, almost ritualistically. When they opened the first one, their blood ran cold. Polaroid photographs. Rows and rows of children's faces, all labeled with dates. Some of those faces matched missing children reports from the 1990s and early 2000s. The true horror? The photographs didn't stop in 1995. They continued until 2008. Police quickly realized Green wasn't just a lone predator. The meticulous labeling, the storage, the silence that lasted for decades, it hinted at something larger. And as they dug deeper, one name kept reappearing in connection with Green. Chief Raymond Clark. Documents tied Clark not just to Green socially, but financially. Wire transfers, property deals, secret meetings. For decades, Clark hadn't just ignored evidence. He had protected Green, shielded him, allowed him to continue preying on the vulnerable. The town's celebrated hero was, in reality, the architect of its nightmares. When Linda Miller heard the news, she broke down. Not because of the horror, she had already lived it for 28 years, but because finally the truth was undeniable. For years, people had mocked her, brushed her off, told her to move on. Now the entire town watched her as she stood before reporters, clutching Sarah's pink journal in one hand and a photo of Sarah in the other. They tried to silence me. They called me unstable. But my daughter's voice was stronger than their lies. And now, every child in those photos will finally be heard. Her words spread like wildfire online. The underdog mother became a symbol of resistance against corruption and power. But Clark wasn't finished. Facing charges for obstruction and evidence tampering, he denied everything. His lawyers painted Green as a sick loner and insisted Clark was guilty of nothing more than negligence. And for a brief moment, it seemed the system might protect him again. He still had friends in high places. He still had influence. And the town's old loyalty to him resurfaced in whispers. Maybe he didn't know. Linda feared history was repeating itself. But then came the bombshell. Among Green's belongings was a VHS tape, labeled only with the word Clark. On it, footage showed Clark himself in Green's basement, examining the photographs, laughing, even discussing which cases they needed to bury. The video ended with chilling words from Clark. No one's ever going to believe her. That's the beauty of it. The courtroom fell silent when the tape was played. The irony was brutal. For decades, Clark had called Linda unstable. Now the world saw who the real monster was. Clark was arrested immediately. His pension stripped, his reputation destroyed, his allies fleeing one by one. Linda attended every hearing, sitting in the front row with Sarah's journal on her lap. When the guilty verdict was read, she whispered, "Justice, Sarah, justice." But even as the courtroom celebrated, a shadow lingered, because the photographs hinted at something bigger. A network. Green and Clark couldn't have done this alone. Some children in the photos were from towns hours away. Some from states Green never visited. The question became terrifyingly clear. How far did this web really spread? This story isn't just about Sarah or Linda. It's about every voice that's silenced by power, every truth buried by lies, every underdog crushed beneath arrogance. And it shows us this. Even when the powerful conspire, the truth has a way of clawing its way back into the light. For 28 years, the truth was buried in a basement, but it couldn't be buried forever. If this story moved you, don't let Sarah's memory fade. Smash that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and share this video so her voice is never silenced again. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Wealth and Wounds for more powerful stories where justice finally finds its way.